So, uh, you are navigating a pretty rigorous accreditation process right now.
You really are. It is a massive undertaking.
Yeah, we recognize the magnitude of what you're doing. You are a professional planner, actively putting in the hours, evaluating some incredibly dense source material.
Right.
And you're building this comprehensive knowledge base that you absolutely need to earn your certification. So today, we have a highly specific, uh, deeply targeted mission designed exclusively to support that effort for you.
Exactly.
We are going to thoroughly deconstruct and analyze one of the foundational documents on your reading list. It's the article titled Acknowledging Wisdom in Communities.
Yes.
And this piece was authored by Jennifer Fix.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she brings the substantial weight of her credentials to the text, right? She's a registered professional planner and a member of the Canadian Institute of Planners.
That professional context is vital, honestly.
For sure.
Navigating this specific text requires a lot more than just skimming for definitions. The concepts presented here reflect a massive paradigm shift in the profession.
Huge shift.
Yeah. Understanding the underlying nuances of this document is going to be absolutely crucial for your success in the evaluation process.
Definitely.
So to ensure you have a calm, highly analytical framework to study from, we're going to explore this document section by section.
Which is the best way to do it.
Right. We are mirroring the exact layout of the original source material. This way, you can seamlessly integrate our deep dive directly into your study notes.
I think that is the most effective way to tackle this. So let's just jump right into the introduction.
Let's do it.
The document begins with this massive, almost jarring historical contrast. It immediately sets up this dark, top-down history of urban planning.
It does.
And it uses that as a stark backdrop against the modern community-led approach that the profession is actively moving toward today. It is quite an intense way to open a technical text.
It's very intentional, though. It establishes a historical baseline right in those opening paragraphs.
Yeah.
The author brings up a very specific historical figure to anchor this era of planning.
Robert Moses.
Robert Moses. The text identifies him as a mid-century New York City official. But what demands your close attention here is the precise phrasing the author uses to describe his methodology.
Yeah, the exact wording.
Yes, the text explicitly states that he imposed freeway projects on and through established neighborhoods.
That word imposed, I mean, it carries so much weight.
It really does.
It implies a complete lack of dialogue. And the consequences outlined in the text are just as severe.
Devastating, really.
Yeah, the document explicitly mentions the displacement of several thousand residents. When you read that, it really paints a picture of a profession that historically viewed a city as well, like a blank canvas, right?
Exactly.
Just drawing massive infrastructure lines on a map without any apparent regard for the human beings living inside those lines. So why does a modern planning guide start by highlighting such a destructive legacy?
Because that legacy functions as a critical conceptual anchor for everything that follows. In the context of professional planning strategy, this mid-century era and this specific approach represent the ultimate top-down methodology.
The absolute extreme.
The absolute extreme of prioritizing physical infrastructure, the efficiency of the automobile, and grand technical vision over human impact and community cohesion.
Right.
When you are analyzing this for your accreditation, you need to recognize this historical baseline as the definitive what not to do.
It's the foundational cautionary tale.
Precisely. The top-down approach of imposing projects and displacing thousands is the exact antithesis of the modern framework planners are expected to uphold today.
That makes a lot of sense. You can't understand the cure if you don't understand the disease.
Exactly.
Which leads us perfectly into the very first major structural heading of the document. Right after setting up that history, the text presents a heading in big, bold letters, starting with humility.
This is where we transition from historical critique into a core modern professional competency. Because this is a primary structural concept in the document, we need to carefully define what humility actually means as an actionable skill for a professional planner.
And that is where I think some friction naturally occurs, right? Well, as a professional, you are studying to be a technical expert. You're evaluating zoning bylaws, you're mastering infrastructure capacities, and running these complex economic impact analyses.
Right, it's highly technical.
So why does a data-driven profession require a seemingly soft skill like humility as its foundational starting point?
If we connect this directly back to the Robert Moses example, the rationale becomes incredibly clear. Humility is the required professional antidote to the top-down approach.
Nice.
If the historical failure was imposing projects with an assumption of absolute authority, the modern solution must logically start with humility.
Makes sense.
The text posits that humility means formally acknowledging that the planner, despite their education and technical prowess, does not hold all the answers.
Right.
It's the formal recognition that while you bring vital technical expertise to the table, the community itself possesses inherent, irreplaceable wisdom about their own lived environment.
You can't just parachute in.
Exactly. You simply cannot access that localized wisdom if you walk into the room assuming your technical models already dictate the best outcome.
That sounds like a massive shift in professional culture. It's the realization that technical data is completely incomplete without lived experience.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the next structural heading in the document, because once you establish that baseline of humility, you have to actively deploy it, right?
We do.
So the text moves to a section titled Creating Meaningful Public Engagement.
And the operative word there is meaningful.
Meaning.
The document does not just instruct planners to create public engagement, it insists, quite forcefully, that the engagement must be meaningful.
Let's explore that distinction, because from a purely technical standpoint, isn't meaningful engagement incredibly difficult to quantify?
It can be.
I mean, anyone can rent out a local community center, set up some folding chairs, present a slideshow, and call it a town hall. How does the text differentiate a standard public meeting from genuine, meaningful engagement?
That is a brilliant question to consider as you study, because you will undoubtedly need to distinguish between different types of community interaction on your exam.
Okay.
The text is addressing a very specific historical friction here. For decades, it became standard practice to engage in what we would call performative engagement.
Performative. Just checking a box.
Essentially, the act of checking a legislative or bureaucratic box, yes. It's holding that town hall on a Tuesday night, presenting a project that is essentially already finalized, and asking for minor feedback that will likely be ignored.
Right.
The document argues that meaningful engagement is the complete opposite of that. Meaningful engagement means that the community's input has genuine substance and possesses the power to actually shape the final outcome of the project.
So it's not just a hurdle.
Not an afterthought or a hurdle to clear at all. It is a foundational building block of the design process itself.
So it is the fundamental difference between presenting a finished blueprint and asking for a critique versus handing the community a blank piece of paper and asking, what should we draw together?
That's a perfect way to visualize it.
And the text doesn't just leave this as an abstract theory either. It provides a highly detailed, real-world case study to illustrate exactly how this functions on the ground.
It does.
The next section is titled Accessing and Including Community Wisdom.
This section bridges the gap between theory and application. The text highlights a specific real-world scenario featuring a key facilitator named Matthew Thompson.
Right.
And he operates with the firm dialogue.
And the document is very specific about the methodology he employed. It identifies his approach as a participatory design process.
Yes.
Furthermore, it explicitly names the specific partners involved in this collaboration, the town of Ladysmith and the Sumitnis First Nation.
We need to really deconstruct this participatory design process because it is a vital term in the text. Think about the mechanics of those words.
Participatory design.
It moves beyond mere consultation. It is the act of designing through active participation.
Right.
What Matthew Thompson facilitated in this case study represents the practical zenith of accessing community wisdom.
How so?
By bringing a colonial municipal structure, the town of Ladysmith, together with an indigenous community, the Sumitnis First Nation, to co-create a spatial design, you are looking at the ultimate modern collaborative counterpoint to the mid-century displacement we analyzed earlier.
It is the complete inverse of imposing a freeway.
Exactly.
Instead of pushing concrete through a neighborhood, the methodology pulls the diverse, historically separated voices of the community into the very center of the drafting table. You can literally trace the evolution of the profession's mindset through this one case study.
You certainly can. And to ensure planners can replicate this mindset, the source document provides a deeply detailed visual framework.
The icon.
Yes, it's not just text. The author uses a specific sequence of numbers, specifically 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, paired with 8 distinct graphical icons to help visualize this complex process.
Right.
As a professional evaluating this material, you must be intimately familiar with these visual elements and the sequential logic they represent.
The visuals are incredibly striking. Instead of traditional engineering flowcharts, we have these deeply symbolic icons. Let's group these icons thematically to really understand the strategy they represent.
Good approach.
Looking at the framework, the first few icons seem to represent what we might call the foundational mindset.
Okay.
The very first icon depicts two hands gently holding a heart. And right above the heart, there is a cluster of dots. Next to that, there's an intricate compass or star motif with multiple points radiating outward.
Yes.
And then there's a third icon showing hands holding a circle divided into 4 quadrants, almost resembling a globe. How should we interpret this specific imagery?
The visual communication here is very deliberate. Let's look at those hands holding the heart. That immediately symbolizes deep empathy, care, and a commitment to the well-being of the community.
And the dots.
The dots hovering above the heart can be interpreted as the diverse, individual voices that make up that broader community. It is the visual manifestation of starting with humility.
I love that. And the compass.
Following that, the compass motif is a classic symbol of navigation. In a planner's toolkit, this represents the establishment of guiding principles or strategic direction.
Setting the course.
Exactly. Before you draw a single line, you need a professional compass to ensure the project stays true to its core values, especially when the collaborative process becomes complicated.
That makes perfect sense. But what about the 4-quadrant circle? It looks like a simplified Earth. But given the context of the Sumimanis First Nation collaboration, I suspect there is a deeper meaning there.
Your suspicion is correct. Connecting this to the broader context of the article, that 4-quadrant circle strongly suggests a holistic worldview. It is deeply resonant with indigenous ways of knowing, frequently symbolized by the medicine wheel, which emphasizes harmony and balance across all aspects of life.
Okay, so bringing that into planning.
For a modern planner, incorporating the symbol means acknowledging that you cannot view a project purely through an economic lens or a structural engineering lens. You must view the environment holistically, integrating social, ecological, historical, and cultural impacts simultaneously.
So we have established empathy, a guiding compass, and a holistic worldview as our foundational mindset.
Correct.
The next thematic grouping in the document seems to represent the active process, where the actual work of planning happens. The fourth icon is fascinating.
It is.
It shows hands holding a large mechanical gear, but right in the dead center of that gear is a heart. The fifth icon shifts the focus outward, featuring a central pair of speech bubbles with a network of lines connecting out to 8 completely different, diverse little nodes.
The imagery of the gear with the heart inside is perhaps the most direct visual metaphor for the modern planning profession found in the text. Yes. The mechanical gear represents the highly technical machinery you are mastering right now for your exam. The infrastructure calculations, the zoning codes, the quantitative modeling.
Right, the hard skills.
But placing the heart inside that gear dictates that this rigid technical machinery must be fundamentally driven by empathy. It is the required integration of hard technical skills and soft relational skills.
And those speech bubbles connecting to the 8 distinct nodes. That looks like the visual definition of the meaningful public engagement we discussed earlier.
It absolutely is. Notice that it is a network, not a single megaphone.
Right, it's multidirectional.
Exactly. The different nodes represent the vast diversity of voices within a municipality, different demographics, different socioeconomic realities, different lived experiences.
Okay.
The planner's role is to facilitate that complex, multidirectional network of communication, ensuring that all those distinct nodes feed back into the central dialogue of the project. It illustrates that meaningful engagement is messy, complex, and highly interconnected.
Which brings us to the final thematic grouping, which we could call the objective evaluation and outcome. This is where the friction of decision-making seems to live.
Yes, the rubber meets the road here.
The sixth icon is a circle divided into 4 sections, containing very clear mathematical symbols: a plus sign, a minus sign, a multiplication sign, and a division sign.
Right.
The 7th icon is a classic light bulb, but it is set within a semicircle that looks like an arched window or a rising sun. And the 8th and final icon is an image of traditional scales, perfectly balanced.
This final sequence is crucial because it demonstrates that accessing community wisdom does not mean abandoning professional rigor.
You still need the math.
Exactly. The mathematical symbols represent the objective calculation of trade-offs. After all the empathetic dialogue and holistic brainstorming, a planner still has to apply rigorous metrics.
Right.
You still have to balance municipal budgets, calculate density requirements, and evaluate environmental constraints. You have to add, subtract, multiply, and divide the realities of the project.
It is the stark reminder that the math still has to work. But it seems the text is suggesting that applying that math to community wisdom produces a better result, which leads us to the light bulb icon.
Correct. Positioned within that semicircle, suggesting a dawn of new possibilities, the light bulb represents the breakthrough moments of innovation that occur specifically during a participatory design process.
Ah, I see.
When you truly integrate diverse community knowledge with strict technical constraints, you generate innovative special solutions that neither the municipal planner nor the community could have possibly conceptualized in isolation.
And the final outcome of all of this, represented by the perfectly balanced scales.
The scales represent the ultimate objective defined by the document: justice, equity, and balance.
Equity.
Yes. After moving through a foundation of empathy, navigating complex dialogue, applying technical trade-off calculations, and generating innovative ideas, the final outcome of the planning process must be fundamentally equitable.
Meaning fair distribution.
Exactly. It means ensuring that the benefits and the burdens of a new development or infrastructure project are distributed fairly across the entire community, rather than imposed on a select few.
When you view all 8 of these icons together, alongside those sequential numbers, it is not just a diagram. It is a comprehensive strategic roadmap for a modern planning career.
It is a profound synthesis of the entire document. To consolidate this for your understanding, these visual symbols represent the multifaceted, highly evolved toolkit of the modern planner.
Right.
You are transitioning from the foundational mindset of empathy and holistic thinking, diving into the active process of complex dialogue and technical integration, and finally arriving at an outcome defined by rigorous evaluation, innovation, and equity.
It's a complete journey.
It is. Grasping how these concepts flow into and depend upon one another is the key to mastering this material.
This has been an incredibly rich, detailed exploration of a single source text. So what does this all mean when you close your study materials and prepare to synthesize this knowledge?
Good question.
Let's briefly recap the intellectual journey we've taken through Jennifer Fix's article. We began by looking backward, acknowledging the destructive, top-down legacy of mid-century planners like Robert Moses.
Right, who utilized an imposed methodology that resulted in mass displacement.
We then explored the critical pivot away from that dark history, which necessitates the modern professional competency of humility.
And we established that this humility is the absolute prerequisite for creating truly meaningful public engagement.
Engagement that is substantive and influential, rather than merely performative or bureaucratic.
Exactly. And we saw exactly how that theory is applied in the real world through the highly specific case study of Matthew Thompson at Dialogue.
Right. We explored how utilizing a participatory design process successfully brought the colonial structure of the town of Ladysmith and the indigenous perspectives of the Suminous First Nation together to co-create their shared spatial future.
Finally, we decoded the detailed visual framework provided in the text. We grouped those 8 graphical icons thematically, tracking the evolution of a project from an initial mindset of empathy and holistic care through the active processes of technical integration and complex networking.
And ultimately ending in the objective evaluation of trade-offs that yield innovative, balanced, and equitable outcomes.
That's exactly right.
To you, the dedicated professional listening to this deep dive, meticulously organizing your notes, take a moment to recognize the depth of what you have just absorbed.
Yeah, absolutely.
You now possess a thoroughly detailed, highly analytical grasp of acknowledging wisdom in communities. You understand the historical context, the operational methodology, the specific case studies, and the deeply symbolic visual frameworks.
You are incredibly well equipped to articulate these concepts with confidence and precision.
As you continue your rigorous preparation, I encourage you to occasionally step back from the technical memorization and reflect on the deeper professional philosophy outlined in this document.
The mechanics of planning are vital, but the mindset you bring to those mechanics will define your career.
That is the perfect sentiment to close on. As you return to your study materials, we want to leave you with one final, lingering question to consider as you shape your own professional trajectory. If a mid-century planner's legacy is defined by the concrete infrastructure they imposed and the communities they displaced, how will your legacy as a modern planner be defined by the diverse voices you actively choose to include?